We should be good now.
It is June 11th, 6 p.m. Calling the State of Complaint Committee to order. We are live in the county building today. So we can start with roll call. Would you want to?
Yeah, 1 second.
We roll call with people live in person or online.
This is off. There we go. You know the battery might be bad. Oh, look. This is off.
Trying to get some feedback and other issues taken care of before we start. So just hang on.
This one's not coming on.
Okay.
Dave Frankenbach,
Here.
Fred Arn,
Here.
Doug Gunter,
Here.
Mark Linscott,
Here.
Ron Nelson,
Here.
Jeanette Schandelmeyer, S. Joe Wilson,
Here.
and Juan Huerta.
Here. Okay. So the minutes from last meeting, we'll hold off and review and approve until the next meeting. We're gonna wait until we get those. So we're just gonna kick it off where we left off last month. And where did we start?
Yeah, so let me share my screen. We have 2 committee members on Zoom, so Doug's out there and Ron. So let me get the screen up. Cool. If you guys on Zoom can't see this, just let us know. It should pull up. So last month we left off on Sagle mixed use commercial. If you remember, our last conversation was about including multifamily, and that this month's homework was to define the boundaries of multifamily. Hopefully you guys can hear us. Doug and Ron, are you able to hear us, or is there a weird feedback when I talk?
There's a weird feedback coming to us.
Yeah, me too. I can hear you, but it's echoey.
Okay, let's see if we can fix that. Sorry about that. Is this better? Can you guys hear me a little bit better now?
Yeah, a little bit better. Yep.
Okay.
Have Juan talk. I couldn't understand him at first either.
I wasn't using my Spanish. Si quiero voy a hablar en español, sí. You got me okay, Ron?
That was better. Gracias.
De nada.
All right, we're just gonna roll in. If you guys have trouble hearing me, just let me know and we'll try to adjust. We have a weird playback here too. I'm basically gonna listen to myself this whole time, which is gonna be really fun. Okay, so we left off on Sagle mixed use commercial. If you remember at the last meeting, literally at the tail end, we started the conversation about multi-use family housing. And I think the goal for this month was to think about that in the commercial zone and design parameters for it. I didn't get any feedback over the last month, so I don't know if we want to kick off this meeting by talking about multifamily. We had left off by saying that maybe it might be good to put a cap on the units or the stories to to make it more in keep with Sagle should someone want to do that type of project, or remove it completely from this language. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. Did anybody think about multifamily over the last month and what we might want to do with this language? And if we're not sure now, we can kind of keep rolling through the document and come back to it later. This is a living document that we're going to, review all together before we bring it to the PNC. So if we're not sure now, we can certainly keep moving to others.
I'm pretty firm in what I want. Anything more than duplexes, I'm personally not interested in.
Okay. Good, everybody here, Doug?
Yes.
Okay. So we could put language in that limits multifamily to duplexes if we wanted.
I have a question. The one that you sent us doesn't have all that marked out.
Yes, correct. I started to do some work to this right before we met. As I was reading through this, we started to talk about PUD densities in the commercial zone and how we haven't talked about that as a group. And I got some feedback from folks saying that they wanted to remove the PUD language. So we were going to talk about that. I think I was going to hide my marks, but you see them now. So we can move to that next or change the language for duplex before I move down the document. It's up to you guys.
I have a question. If we don't include multifamily, and I'm assuming we're talking about apartment type housing, where would we include it if we do?
That's up to you. I mean, you could put it.
Well, that's how I'm throwing it out.
Yeah.
Are we going to eliminate it completely, or are we going to move it to some other area?
I think it's already taken out of whatever we decided to call the commercial industrial zone, because all we allow there is the caretaker,
Right.
right?
So this is mixed.
And I would assume if, for example, if we were to follow Doug's suggestion and limit it to duplex or whatever, some other limit, it certainly wouldn't be more than that in the more rural zones, at least in my way of thinking. The only exception to that we probably need to talk about a little is the resort areas. I wonder about. So,
One of the things I think that we have to consider, is that way back, we were told that Sagle School is losing their population because they don't have affordable housing. So I think that we need to put some kind of affordable housing someplace. And not all those folks are going to be able to afford single family homes. And they're going to, in fact, I don't know if it's still around right now, but a few years ago, there was this big deal of it was better to rent than to buy. Or there was a nationwide trend to rent instead of buy. And I don't know, we talked about it fitting best in the mixed use commercial area. I don't know about Sagle neighborhood. I don't. It says smaller residential lot sizes or subdivisions, so I don't know.
As I have a question in regards to the Sagle mixed use commercial. This is going to be replacing the current comp plan proposed land use matrix. Which one of these is it going to be replacing?
So yours, it would replace the transition. So right now, transition includes industrial and commercial in the current comp plan. You guys have broken that out to be two separate things.
Is that what's in yellow?
Gray.
Which one's gray?
This whole area.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so our current comp plan has it as one. So you can be one or the other, depending if you meet the zoning requirements or the definition. We are making this a little bit more like zoning and breaking it out.
I have a question for Doug. Doug,
Yeah, go ahead.
if you, Do you have a vision of any place in this that you would allow for low income and or apartment living?
Honestly, I really don't. I just don't see 3-story apartment complexes here. But I'm just one person, so, but no, I do not see it.
Yeah, I'm kind of siding with Jeanette here. I mean, if we don't do it somewhere, we can limit this, how many stories or how many units we can have, but
We talked about that, it's in there, isn't it? Isn't it in there?
I'm
I
not
thought I saw 12 or something in there.
So currently where this is gray on the map, is multifamily allowed there now?
Good question. I think it is. Let me just confirm. In the zoning.
And the next-
So Mark, the multifamily is allowed with a conditional use permit. The multifamily being more than a duplex.
So Milton said
Right,
that
right now we've got,
allowed with a conditional use permit, and then we lost them.
And like David asked, what density is that allowed at right now?
That's a good question, Milton. Do you know the answer to that question?
I didn't hear it.
What's the density? Are there any limitations on the density that's allowed even with the CUP in that area?
Well, the ideal situation is that they have urban services, and so it would approach the density, but it makes it easier to go over that density because it is a duplex. So, or a fourplex. So yeah. It's a tough issue because there's a time when this is appropriate. I don't think that this area is ready for low income housing. I think that that'll come down the road. Let it go to Sandpoint where they have urban services. I just don't think that it's a problem that the county needs to be addressing or trying to address. It's interesting to watch how Sandpoint has developed. They've slowly allowed for taller buildings, more density, and they sit there in their meetings right now trying to address the growth that they're having, and they have nowhere to grow, and so they continue to increase density and increase the heights of their structures. So I get that it would be good to look at a place that it would belong, but without urban services, it's really hard to say that this should go somewhere because it really does belong with urban services.
Everybody agree on that?
I do. That makes sense to me.
Yes, that's kind of,
So do you want me to just strike that language, including multifamily from mixed use commercial?
Or do we put a limitation on it, so they have to have urban services?
Yeah. I think that.
So if it's in this zone and they have urban services, then we can allow at least. I'm okay with Doug's limitation that we could allow duplex. I'm not sure how much demand there is for that kind of housing area.
actually out of, I want to say, what's the road that cuts off runs parallel to the railroad tracks?
Is it on Linden or Monterey?
Yeah, there's a bunch of fourplexes out there.
Yeah, this is Ron. I pretty much agree with that too. The whole Sagle commercial use area is all limited to services. It's all going to depend on what kind of services are going to be available for business and or duplex residential use.
Well, that's probably the only place that you'd be able to put in multifamily units.
Right.
And I have a problem with just duplexes. I also have a problem with 3-story, 20-unit behemoth buildings. Maybe if we could do it in a 4-plex or a 4 apartment, that's probably a little more affordable for people and still small enough so that we don't feel like we're being pushed into the lake.
Are there names for those kinds of places that say have 10 units and no more than 2 stories? Do they have names?
Apartment.
I mean, they kind of do, but I can't remember what they
I'll
are.
throw this out. It may be a silly idea. Does anybody
Just,
else-
I really think that we're talking about an issue that's 10 years down the
Fire
road.
departments think a bunch of duplexes,
All right,
right?
cluster.
Clustered,
We call it
So-
cluster.
clustered. I mean, it looks better than a big
Yeah,
20-unit, whatever, 30-unit apartment building, because it's got more land around it. I don't know if it'd be economically feasible to do that anymore. I don't know.
You know, and I think something like that would lend well to maybe a PUD
Yeah.
potentially. My concern, I'm kind of thinking down the road, when we hand this off and then it gets handed off again, and we're looking at affordable housing, which is touched on affordable housing, we're saying, no, we don't think you should go there. Don't made the comment in regards to stay in Sandpoint. County commissioners, this is one of the key components is affordable housing. Now, if we're looking at density and we're saying we can't allow multifamily, well, multifamily is one way to keep the cost down for affordable housing. The other way is having higher density property. If you have nothing but 5-acre pieces, there's no way you can have affordable housing. It's going to require multifamily. But if we're getting direction from staff and maybe look at it at the city, well, then when it goes to these guys and on the county commissioners, that's one of the components that they're going to have to look at. And if Sagle punts it, Sally punts it, Blanchard punts it, Priest Lake punts it, where are we going to have it? It needs to go wherever we've got services. Where are services right
so
now? The gray area has it right now.
what
And
you,
we allow 10,000 square foot lots there if they're services.
But services, right?
And now is that enough to satisfy the demand or the requirement for low income housing, low cost housing?
I'm gonna throw something out that's gonna muck up what y'all are talking about, and that is, are motels allowed in this area? So what is to stop the motel person from doing, whatever the meandering moose used to be called, or still is called, which is like, monthly apartments?
Well, country Inn does it too.
And I mean, and that would be affordable housing. Do we want to allow that? Can we not allow that? I mean, I don't know, but all the things that we're talking about here could be, someone could build a motel that has 20 units and rent them out by the month or the week. And I don't, is that part of our plan? It'd probably be affordable for a lot of people, maybe.
I think
My-
we're
my-
getting off going.
My question is, everybody keeps talking about affordable. Define affordable.
Yeah.
What is that monetary value?
Right
Well-
now, it's up to $200,000.
Well, I mean, as far as a monthly,
Oh, no, it's not for rentals, it's for purchases. Affordable
Correct.
housing is for purchasing.
yeah, and that is not affordable housing for the working class here. As everybody keeps talking about affordable housing in Sagle. I work the building industry, you work the real estate, Doug does. That is just not an achievable thing in Sagle. Land values for the county are high for Sagle.
Yeah.
You can't put affordable housing in. And apartments is not affordable housing.
Well, it would be subsidized housing. That's what it would be.
Let me tell you about subsidized housing. Mark could probably back down this. all these apartments around here are federally funded to be built. They have to keep 10% for subsidized housing. Out behind the jail on Samuelson Road in particular, my daughter lives out there. She qualifies for subsidized housing. She's been in there 2 years. I think there's 70 units, so 7 units are subsidized. The rest are fair market. People get into those, they stay.
Sure,
So when you see subsidized housing, not the whole apartment building is
I
subsidized,
know.
10%. So to encourage that out here, they build 40 units. Okay, so 4 subsidized, that takes care of 4 families. And the rest is fair market, which is pushing towards a mortgage payment.
Well, that's why I'm saying that these are all these things we have to consider when we're saying we're gonna have multifamily homes and whether they should be duplexes or fourplexes. That's not affordable housing either.
Well, but it's on the continuum, right? It's more affordable than a house on 5 acres.
That's true.
Right? It's more affordable than a house on 2.5 acres. Next step that we have down to 5 in our current state. And it may be more affordable even than a house, single family home on 10,000 square feet, which is the most dense housing we've got so far, I think, in our current state. Yeah.
So I think we had this conversation months ago too about, we're not in the position about to say that we're gonna put affordable housing. We're here just to put in the limitations and what you can and can't have, like what Doug has brought up, and having services for that, and that's fine. I think we can just, put that in, what if it has to have, sewer, water, all the services that have, that's fine. But when we get to start labeling stuff affordable housing, that's out of our realm. And we should just stick to what the plan has going. Matt, did you have your hand up?
The question was asked, what defines affordable housing? Bonner County has a median household income right now according to Idaho Department of Labor. It came out in 2018. They have changed it a little bit. Of a little over $46,000 a year median household income. What they define as affordable housing is if you go ahead and have 30% or less of your gross income go towards housing. The problem we have in Bonner County is that's well over 40%. That same report in 2018 gone ahead and studied all 44 counties in the state of Idaho. Bonner County was given a grade of, I mean, there's only 2 other counties in the state of Idaho that also received classifications of B. At least Kootenai County has got a grade of a C because they have higher incomes and less housing expenses. And so I know that it is a problem. I know we're guided right here through Idaho Title to go ahead and accommodate for other necessary types of development such as low cost housing. That's right there in Idaho Code. It's the very first thing they put on here. And so it is a real problem in Bonner County. That's all I can say.
So Milton has his hand up in Zoom, so I don't know if we want to turn to him. Milton, can you hear us?
Yeah, well, so density is about 12,000 square feet for the first unit and then 3,000 square feet for each additional unit. So with a conditional use permit, so you can put about, 10 or 11 units per acre. And so you can address this in several ways. You can address it units per acre, you can address it not at all. We can sit and talk about low-income housing all day. There's other things that go with low-income housing. There's access to jobs, access to grocery stores and medical, and that's just not there yet. It's trying to be there, but I just don't know that it's there all the way yet. You want to leave it in a small area, fine, leave it in a small area, but again, it's just there's so many other things that have to happen for low-income housing to occur. Like I said, we're in the process right now of reviewing a conditional use permit at Priest Lake for 8 units, 2 4-plexes.
Criteria that you need to satisfy or have meaningful, I would paraphrasing, but low-income housing, you have to have access to jobs, you have to have access to grocery stores, drugstores, those kind of services that people need to get to. And I think he didn't say this, but in some cases, they're talking about low-income, there may be people who have limited transportation options. So being over here on the south end of the Long Bridge may not be the right place for them, it may make more sense for them to actually be in Sandpoint, going to a lot of that stuff.
My point wasn't that we need to put in here that we want to encourage low-income housing or anything like that. Just that we need multifamily housing someplace in Sagle, I think.
Yeah, I don't want subsidized housing. I think
Well,
that's.
that's not for us to decide.
Right.
Well,
We can probably rule it out by just allowing it.
well, I liked your,
Or we can enable it if we allow other entities to happen.
I liked your idea of making it relative. Give people at least a chance.
Yeah, I think the true, in my mind, the true low-income housing belongs in Sandpoint. But that still doesn't completely solve the problem, because we really need to have probably a continuum of housing options in terms of their cost, if you look at sort of countywide. And maybe some of that solution might make sense for people, but not the true low income. Step or two above that, if you will, but not as expensive as a house on 5 acres.
So how about we do a fourplex? Instead of it just a straight up duplex.
My question to them would be on what size lot? What's the density? Which to some extent gets to maybe a little bit of height as well.
Well,
I think the government dependent health is gonna govern unless you're on services.
well, that's what I was saying. If you
Have to
have
be on
services,
services, we say.
Yeah, so in current zoning, you have to be on services to even be eligible for any multifamily.
Which I'm good with that. I think that's a requirement that we should have.
And just by the way that you've laid your zoning, you have done that without actually having to say it. You've limited it to 2.5 acres for a single family dwelling without services. And so that automatically makes you ineligible for those multifamily homes. If you're able to hook into those services, then you can get your lots down to 10,000 square feet. Milton says that for one unit, one duplex unit, you need 12,000 square feet. So it would be the equivalent of a home on every 12,000 square foot lot, but they'd be combined. So usually they'll take a larger parcel and then stack those houses in there. So you're kind of already saying it. You already have it in some sense. One house per 10,000 with services, those can be combined to be a multifamily dwelling unit or single family dwellings on separate lots.
It's already there, and of course, then we'd go up to the planning department to figure it out if they came up with wanting a fourplex.
I really could not hear you.
But there's a sentence that sits in there all by itself, maximum residential density shall be limited to 12 on a half acre, or 2.5 acres, or what? It's just sitting there all by itself.
Yeah, so that's that part I had stricken originally.
know.
But this was laying out the parameters for PUD, which is what would be required for conditional use permit to even be eligible for multifamily dwelling. So yeah, you have to go through a process to get there. It currently exists right now in Sagle. Folks could apply for this. They could apply for a multifamily dwelling. It's not happening because I don't think it pencils out and there aren't the services to make it happen.
Don't
What we
cover the
want to,
services, they have to-
they could, yeah, and in some places there are services, but I think it's still not penciling out. I don't think people looking for multifamily homes are gonna wanna be in Sagle because they don't have cars and there isn't a grocery store and they need to really be in Sandpoint. So there's things that are gonna have to change for that to even work out financially, for anybody to even really want to do it there. What we want to identify today is to leave the door open for that to happen. And it sounds like we do as a whole. The question is what do we want it to look like? Do we want them to be 2 units only, fourplexes only, triplexes? What does it look like? Do we want to leave it open and let the market decide? That's what you guys are here to decide. So it sounds like we want multifamily housing, but what does that look like for cities?
What does that sentence mean that's still there?
Which sentence?
Maximum residential density shall be limited to 12.
I don't think it means anything.
I know, does it mean 12 houses,
No,
12
because
people?
It's an incomplete sentence. The way it's written.
It was there to bother you.
Yeah.
I guess.
It has to be
Well, if
12,
she-
it has to be 12 per something.
We knew you'd get something.
She crossed it out here, but she left, didn't there, and so it's making me crazy that it's not crossed out anymore.
Well, before we get down to the bot, I kind of like that sentence as it is right now, the Doug added the limited to duplex units, and then home should be limited with urban services. But that's it.
I
Keep it
have,
at that.
I have no problem with fourplexes, up to fourplexes myself. I've also observed fourplexes on.
Yeah. Did you hear?
No.
We hooked one up with them recently, a couple of fourplexes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they use them for workforce, housing, employee housing.
Oh, yeah.
So we just looked at the county site, that fourplex on Lake Knight Road. It's on, sits between Lake Knight and the railroad. And it's a very nice, well maintained, nice looking, good access, everything else. Fourplex. It's on just over 3/4 of an acre. But not knowing how that happened because it's a piece of property squeezed in between the railroad and Lake Knight. So it's- yeah, and it's been there for a long time. It's been there well over 30 years.
That's how it happened.
We got one on the Mount
Late
Baldwin
70s.
Lane too.
But the point is, if that one works. So whether it's a shining example of what could be, it sits right next to 4 duplexes down the road. They're also on those same depth lots over the railroad. They're on 2, I think.
You already have low income housing in your RV parks or your mobile home
Yeah.
parks. They want to tear those out and put in apartment complexes.
Those aren't individual septic tanks there though.
Like I said, the world needs to change. Yeah.
So you guys want to leave it at the duplex units, and then we go with designations on the lot sizes. That's when they can put them together, and that goes back to where they would decide, okay, if they wanted to do it, they would have to have the 2 lots next to them, and then they can do whatever, correct?
Yeah, the only other way to do it is to get on to the next paragraph, which your can address it. So I put that in the stages. So what it was saying is that maximum residential density shall be 12 dwellings per acre. Which can only be per acre. And so you guys could also limit it that way. So not only. So it's saying. I haven't seen that one. Are you doing the math?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is Ron. I don't know where y'all went, but your voices are slowly fading out. We're not getting much on our end.
12,000 for the first unit and then 1,000 square feet for each addition.
Get rid of that.
Okay.
So, algebra.
43 times 16.
We're working on it, Ron.
Okay,
What was the increment, 3,000 for each addition? or-
12 plus 3,000 for each addition. No, yeah.
So that would say you need 45, you need an acre. to do 12. What kind of a building does that look like, that 12 units?
Well,
Is that like a 3-story building in order to do that practically? Yeah.
So you could start.
you could do, I mean, you could do 2 stories, right? 12 units and a 2-story.
So the ones going up in is that four options.
Is that the one that you're working on? Yeah, so the Grandview Lodge, they're all duplexes. They're, 4,000 square foot each.
And they're 2 stories, but you don't have, a family, like a single family here and then one upstairs.
Right.
They're not that kind of multi-family. You live in your unit and that's how the unit is.
Those are fourplexes, you said.
Those are duplexes and those are new projects. And this is a fourplex project, 30,000 of it.
Is that only 1 acre?
It's on a couple of
3 acre lot, 2 acres, but they're only two fourplexes, so 8 units. So nothing crazy like selling a lot or anything.
So, I mean, in theory, if you had 12 lots that had 15 square foot footprint, that's 18,000 square feet in an acre, so impervious coverage is probably okay. And you could make those 2 stories, and then they'd be 3,000 square foot units. First and second floor, or they could be small if it was 1 story. I'm just trying to get my head around what does a 12-unit building look like?
Yeah.
You stick it on an acre.
And
So it's not like, it doesn't have to be some 4-story monstrosity.
And do we
Practically.
want to limit it to 2 stories?
You could, you definitely could do that. You could limit multifamily housing to 2 stories.
Limited to 2 stories?
And just because 12 dwelling units is allowed doesn't mean that all 12 are attached. Most people will do duplexes or triplexes or something like that. I mean, we do live in a rural area. I don't think most people want to live in a string of houses unless they're like up at Schweitzer and they're barely there or something. I think that's the only place I see more than 4 in 1 row. So yeah, we could limit it to two stories. We could put language like
I wouldn't want more than 2 stories. There might be a lot of single family homes are 2 stories. So that would be reasonable.
So
I was trying to think of what, if there were neighbors, they aren't gonna freak out about 2-story because they might have a 2-story.
So do we no longer want to limit to duplex units? We just want to limit the number of stories? Because right now we added language limited to duplex units when Doug was first talking about it, and we all kind of agreed and then kind of, backed up from that. But.
Well,
Oh, Doug, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if we just want to take it to vote or if we want to just keep beating this up, but
what
if
if
we
that
go a vote route.
First paragraph or move down to the second paragraph, because it doesn't seem to fit where it is.
If we go a vote
Doug, I
route,
don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you right now. So give us a second to get you back online here. We're having some technical difficulties.
okay?
Oh, there you are.
There you are.
Hey, now.
Hello. Okay, what I was saying was, I don't know if we want to beat this up, continue to beat this up, but if we want to take it to some sort of a vote or whatever, but I'm sticking with my vote at the duplex.
Yeah, this is Ron too, we've already heard from Milt, that we don't have the services available to do much beyond what we've got. So keep going with multifamily, 4-unit homes and all this stuff, and 2-story when we can't even provide services. And we keep talking about it. I don't understand where we're at, I guess.
Well, I agree. Well, we're supposed to be projecting, right? I mean, 30 years down the road. So what we have today will probably be different 30 years from now. I do like the idea of making provisions for a little more density.
And we just have to decide where we want it. I mean, we can't keep saying, well, we don't want it there, or we don't want it there.
Right, we need to vote on the language.
Yeah.
I think we've heard some people say 4plexes and some people, and Doug and others say duplexes. So it seems like we need to resolve that.
My point about 4plexes was I'm okay up to 4plexes. I'm not gonna freak out if somebody says if everybody says they want to limit it to duplexes. That's not issue. But I do think that sentence up there, including multifamily, that sentence that's in red in the first paragraph, needs to go to the second paragraph. Because that is an overview paragraph, and the part that's talking about the dwellings and how many and blah, blah, blah is in the second paragraph.
All right, well, let's decide on if that sentence is okay. I think we should just vote on that sentence right there. And if you like it or you don't like it, or you're for it or against it, I'm good with what it says right there, right now.
So does someone want to make a motion to limit to duplex units, and then we'll take a vote?
I'll make a motion.
All right, we got Esther Wilson, sorry,
Second, I'll second it.
and we have a second. All in favor to keep the sentence as is up there?
Aye.
Aye.
Ron says aye.
All opposed?
For the record, Mark and Scott will abstain. I want to do some more thinking on this. We haven't really done a detailed examination. It's just a warm fuzzy feeling. So where's our analysis?
Absolutely. Like I said, we always go back on, we always said that we can always go back and talk about it again. But right now, we just need to get something going and move forward. So
We already tabled it 1 month. We need to move, we need to choose something and move on.
Jeanette, are you a yes or a no then?
Am I what?
Yes or no for you?
I don't care. That's why I didn't vote,
she's
because I don't
Abstaining?
really,
Okay.
it
So
doesn't
two
matter to me.
abstain or,
Two
I think
abstaining, 1 nay, 5 yay.
so,
The question is, if a duplex is, we have a certain, whatever it is, 1 acre or whatever it is there. I'm not sure what it is. Yes, per acre. And we have a duplex here and a duplex here and a duplex here, and it's all in the same acre, I'm fine. I vote yes.
But this, in principle, depending on what we do about the density, because we have to come address that 12 sentence. But, you know, you could put a duplex on a 10,000 square foot lot with urban services.
Right.
And you could do one next door and one next door and one next door. And, you know,
Yeah.
you could do that for this language.
Yeah.
So you could see little areas that have duplex after duplex after duplex on 10,000 square foot lots, as long as it was in an area that had urban services.
And
That's what, and I agree with you. I'm okay with that. I think it's not going to happen everywhere because we don't have urban services everywhere.
all right. So we got the votes in, so the motion passes with that sentence as is for until we see fit to go across the
Until we
street
do some
again.
analysis.
Yeah, until we get some analysis going on. But I think, well, I mean, I'm not gonna think anymore. Okay, we're good with that then. Now we can continue on with the rest of the paragraph of. What, Jeanette, what'd you say? You wanted to move that sentence?
it seems like the second paragraph is getting into detail. And maybe there's a little bit too much detail and number in the first paragraph, which is supposed to be an overview, because it's talking about the intent and so on up there. But I can see why it could even say including multifamily limited as below or something. I don't know, because it could say just limited to duplex units is like too much detail up there when we have the other detail down in the second paragraph. That's what I'm saying. Because it could say including multifamily limited to areas with urban services, and then move the duplex units down below. Because that's not very, that's just kind of dumped in there, and on the bottom we're being very specific.
I think I agree with Jeanette. It would read better if we left that first paragraph.
If it just said including multifamily
Period.
homes limited to areas with,
Urban service.
yeah,
We
with
actually-
urban services, and then put the duplex units down below.
So I just realized if you keep reading down below, it already talks that you have to have urban services. So we don't need to state it in the first paragraph. It kind of gives the nuts and bolts. It says PUD standards shall require considerations for water, sanitation, open space, screening, etc.
I think that should be in
Provision
the
of-
top paragraph.
Provision of.
See,
urban
we're
transit.
saying, in the top paragraph, we're setting up the parameters for what it's gonna be, and in the bottom paragraph, we're being specific.
Jeanette,
This is what that means.
this is why we have the homework during the month. Is if you would send us these edits during the month, it would really help us. Because to have this discussion in this meeting is just, it takes a lot of time. And so that's why we do the homework and have you read it and send us, you want us to move this sentence or move this? So let's move on and send that to us in the email and we'll consider that. Is that, you know, we don't want to just sit here and wordsmith the entire document. We'll never get done. And in 5 years, you know, we'll need multifamily.
So let's just, I think the content is good on the first part. If I agree, this might need some wordsmithing and some moving, and that might be easiest to just coordinate for next time. So let's keep going on that first one. So it's just basically talking, the first paragraph is talking about what's allowed. So we've included multifamily housing, but limited to duplex units. We're saying that in the commercial mixed use designation, that uses will be mixed. You're gonna have commercial, you're gonna have light industrial, and you're gonna have residential uses. So you can have a little bit of everything in your commercial zone. So the outcome of this designation is to establish businesses and services that meet the needs of the residents of the Sagle area and its visitors. So it's gonna be a little bit of everything. It talks about protecting the health and safety and general welfare of residents, the integrity of the natural environment, which we also talk about in your other chapters. You've already laid out those goals and policies, and that's what we will refer to. And then it talks about rural character. So the next part about this paragraph that's important is that it talks about how it's the second ripple of development off US Highway 95. So we talked about that. You've got your industrial, then you've got your mixed use commercial, and then probably after that will be the next land use designation, which is like your Sagle neighborhood. So I think that's what we talked about in our matrix before, and that's kind of that content I wanted you guys to look at and make sure that we're emanating it correctly here. So we're limiting this area to within a ½ mile of US 95. Or an associated frontage road if those ever happen.
Isn't it really? Because we already said that the commercial light industrial area is within a quarter mile.
Mhm.
So isn't it really from a quarter of a mile to a ½ a mile?
Potentially, yeah, yes.
It's not
actually, yes.
really in that first quarter mile. The first quarter mile is different.
Yeah.
By the way, we defined the light industrial area, right? Or not?
Well,
Or not remember that
actually,
correctly.
I'm gonna answer real quick, Mark. So not necessarily. So because you're allowing this within a ½ mile, folks could apply for this land use designation closer to the highway if
Okay.
they want residential, because if you remember in your industrial,
There's
we are
no
not
residential.
allowing
Yeah,
housing.
yeah.
So it kind of does matter, because you can be this closer to the highway.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
And we're still talking about this color here. It's all joining Highway 95.
The existing
So,
transition.
yes, so to go from a quarter mile to a quarter mile and a half, that may be an error. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if
But she just addressed it and said, this is correct. It should be within a ½ mile.
yeah, within a half mile.
It gives
So the-
flexibility.
We're not excluding this in that first quarter mile,
I
even
thought
though
we
that's the way
did.
we did. What we are excluding is that the light industrial, or whatever we called it, can't
Yep.
go past a quarter mile.
Well,
Exactly.
remember all our discussion about caretakers and stuff and how we didn't want caretakers?
Yeah,
Mark,
that-
yeah.
I think we ended up alone.
But I think when you look at what's on the ground right now,
Yeah.
the fourplex that he was just talking about far exceeds that. And are we talking about a quarter mile as crow flies, quarter mile as you drive?
So we measured it. I don't know if you guys remember, but this winter we measured how far the transition zone went, and that's how we decided on how far out it goes. And so I believe, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, that the farthest extent of the current existing transition zone is a ½ mile away from Highway 95. But we can fact check that when we go to lay the map. And so if we need to adjust these numbers, we certainly can. So I remember measuring it because we had a really big conversation on what is a quarter mile, what is a half mile, and are we encompassing what already exists? You might have not, oh, you had surgery. Okay. So we'll measure it again before we lay it down to make sure we're not excluding any parts of that zoning or that land use designation. So I think that that makes sense so far. So moving, are you guys good to move to the second paragraph maybe? Okay.
Is that the one
So-
starts residential?
Oh, we were.
Mhm.
I thought we were there too.
Almost, one sentence away. So the second paragraph just talks about densities and where things should go. So residential development in this designation should be encouraged to be a part of a mixed-use development with commercial type uses. So one or the other. Site design standards for this designation should be consistent with the preservation of rural character. This is pretty important because when folks apply for a zone change or a comprehensive plan amendment, it triggers us to look at your definition of rural character, which was a big thing for us for a while. Any industrial or storage uses should be screened from views, from rights of way to encourage a rural edge design. I think that's old language. This is your original document, your burner plate. So some of this stuff we haven't talked about or isn't language we've used, but it might work. The minimum lot size shall be a half acre with urban services. Oh, I think that needs to be updated because we decided 10,000 square feet. correct? With urban services and 2.5 acres with individual services. So that came out of that matrix we worked on for many months. It goes on to say that maximum residential density shall be limited to 12 units per acre, which would only be achievable through a planned unit development, so through a PUD. So we're restricting, essentially, like we talked about, multifamily housing, that's where that would come into play. We'd be restricting that to a PUD. And right now it allows for 12 units per acre. So, which I think did come out to 12,000 square feet for the first unit and then 3,000 square feet for each additional unit. So I don't know if that works for you guys to just keep
See,
it
that
the same.
seems to go against what it says in the first paragraph about the limited to duplex units. So that needs to be there if we're gonna limit it to, because that's not 12 dwelling units per acre. Are you saying they have to be they can't be more than duplexes?
They can only couple them in units of 2. You cannot couple them in any more units than 2. So you can't do triplexes, quadplexes, etc. That's, yeah. So it's not contradicting itself. It's saying how many units you can have, how many, dwellings you can have per acre.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in a PUD, you don't have to even apply for a PUD in any zone with any density.
Correct, but the use has to be permissible.
And it can be limited this way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So essentially in Sagle mixed use, in our future land use table, for multifamily units, it would not be permissible, but for duplexes, it would. And then it would make you eligible for a PUD. You can't apply for a PUD for things that are simply not allowed in that zone.
So is a duplex a dwelling unit? Or is it 2 dwelling units? Okay.
So I don't think this is internally consistent because a duplex on 10,000 square feet is more than 12 dwelling units per acre.
You could have 6
I think.
duplexes on an acre.
Duplex on,
10,000 is more than 12 per acre.
Every 10,000 square feet, 2 units. You have 43,000, so basically that'd be 8 per acre.
Yeah, or a little more with, yeah.
so this
So-
is pretty steep.
It's very high density.
Yeah, very high density. So do we want to make it a duplex per 10,000 square feet?
I think that was my thought.
Ron has.
If that's the minimum lot size and we're gonna let them put a duplex on a minimum lot size, then I think that's the maximum density. That was the way I was thinking about it.
So it would be
Be
8.
consistent.
So Ron, you have your hand up if you want to.
Yes, it seems, for some reason in my mind, I thought we were trying to stay to like 10 dwellings per acre. 12 just, I don't remember 12, I guess, but things, we've been doing a lot over the past few months. So anyway, that's what I thought.
So if we do the math, a duplex on 10,000 square feet comes out to 8 dwelling units per acre. So I think that's consistent.
It's consistent, but then my next question about this sentence, remember I had this question
Yeah.
before, is does the PUD requirement only kick in at 8? And if you do 7 per acre, you don't have to do a PUD? I don't think that sentence really, to me, it doesn't, that's the only way I can interpret that sentence actually, is it says you can do 8, but only with a PUD. So that tells me that anything less than 8, I don't need a PUD. Is that really what we intend to say? Is that really what we intend to say? So it's only at 8 that the PUD requirement kicks in. If that's what we intend to say, I guess I'm okay with that, but.
I agree with you. I mean, we need to clarify that language.
Right.
You know, so if it's 4.
Yeah.
You're still doing a PUD.
Yeah, if that's what we want.
I think we do.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything that gets, you know, starts exceeding the density, you know.
Well, the next sentence, look at the next sentence. Standalone residential developments may be approved with PUD. Sorry, that's what it says something completely different.
No, standalone residential developments, that's like if I want to put, you know, the Ice House Landing is a 9-house PUD, 9-home PUD. Ice House Landing on the edge of Coquilala Lake.
Is that what, the question I was going to ask is, what is the definition in your guys' world of a standalone residential development?
Single family dwelling, right?
One single family dwelling?
That's what I thought it meant.
Right. Right.
So if you wanted to put 2 single family dwellings on 10,000 square feet, right?
Right. Well, or in that case, the Ice House Landing, the minimum lot size is 2.5 acres. They went down to 1.5 acres or something like that for those lots to put 9 in that property. They gave up 23 acres of wetland in order to do that.
So I think how this reads, so what you're doing is you're allowing a maximum residential density of 2 per 10,000 square feet versus 1 per 10,000 square feet with a PUD. So anytime someone proposes that extra dwelling unit on that 10,000 square foot lot, it will trigger a PUD or a conditional use permit for that project. Because then we have to check to make sure they have all the adequate services, that they're hooked up and they're, you know, have stormwater and all the different things that come with those projects.
Okay, I like that that's what we're doing. I think we need to make sure that the words clearly reflect that intent. So I would say, instead of saying you can have 8 per acre, I would take it down to it's one per 10,000 square feet. And if you go to 2 without a PUD, if you go to 2, it requires a PUD.
I see. So maximum residential density shall be limited to 2
Right.
units
So I think that's what you just said, really, right?
per minimum lot size.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hmm.
Standard, in the last sentence in that paragraph, standard density without a PUD shall be 1 dwelling, 1 ADU. What if you have 10,000 square foot lots? Your standard density is 2 per lot.
Well, but I look at an ADU as different than a second dwelling. Maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but
You're right. That's why we.
yeah, it's different than a duplex, or it's different than somebody trying to put 2 single family homes on a 10,000 square foot lot. Because I think that
Yeah.
the demand on the services is less. The way maybe not.
I would assume, I mean,
Yeah,
ADU,
there's-
2-bedroom.
Yeah, and they're limited in square footage, right?
So could a duplex be, 1 DU and 1 ADU?
No,
2
No, I
dwellings
think that's different.
versus saying 8.
I think that's different.
well, so guys, hand
He's
up.
saying we should just say it.
Ron, you got your hand up?
2 single family dwellings.
No, I don't think so.
2 dwelling units per 10,000.
There you go.
Is the maximum residential density with a PUD. Instead of saying that 8 per acre. Does that work the same way? It does?
Well, it comes out to more. You get 9.
which we've said is 2 per 10,000 square feet is 9 per acre roughly, right? Almost 9 per acre, it's not quite.
I like that language.
Uh-huh.
And then which would only be. Okay.
Should we be concerned with what other sub areas and areas that are not in a sub plan are doing? In other words, to remain consistent with other parts of the county?
Oh, boy.
Why?
You want to be the same as them?
I think it makes sense to be consistent throughout the county and a lot of these things. So that was my question.
Well, that's what makes Sagle different, though. I mean, we are unique. Everybody should be unique. I mean, we want to.
So my question is, has any of these other areas come forth with anything like this? Or?
I mean, does Selly Valley even allow multifamily in their,
Yeah.
in their current draft? I didn't think so.
Anyways, that's-
They don't have any
You mentioned
services.
Priest Lake. I know Priest Lake's got a group, and there's some of these things going on up there.
They're not this way.
Okay.
But look at where those people live. They don't live on the side of Highway 95, you know. Selly, does it go over to the highway? The Selly one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, they don't have the services.
They don't have any services at all out there.
Yeah.
They banned
City
it.
impact,
They
ACI.
actually are not allowing. Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern, because
Yeah.
I think to some extent that should be done, but I almost think that has to be something that's done as a secondary step once all the sub-area plans are put together and see where there's areas where they're close.
That's gonna
And
be one of the
But
big chores that we're gonna handle is to see if that's necessary,
Right.
and how it's to be handled.
Yeah.
There's gonna be differences,
Yeah.
that's why these committees form. But there's gonna be broad similarities.
Right, right.
And just one thing we gotta make sure of, and we do it, is make sure there isn't any conflicting.
Mhm.
So, we don't wanna, if there's conflicting language, all of a sudden puts one of the planning areas a great advantage over another one, maybe we don't see that.
And on the other hand, if there's areas where they're very similar but different, maybe they can be harmonized. So,
No, we're in our Priest River, but up to ours. Blanchard, whatever the one is, does it but up to
Yeah.
Sagle?
Yeah, right.
So that would be the only one that I think needs to be quote harmonized, because Selly is the other side of Sandpoint. I mean, it's way far away. It doesn't need to be harmonized with Sagle. Ask them if they want to harmonize with Sagle. You know the answer to that. So now what are we changing this to?
So I've got it all cleaned up. So we have changed this to say maximum residential density shall be limited to 2 dwelling units per 10,000 square feet, which would only be achievable through a PUD. Same thing with standalone residential developments.
Does that mean no ADUs are allowed? Is that right?
ADUs are allowed.
Talk about different kinds of things. We're being really careful. We need different.
So I think we've got that proofread. So it goes on to say these provisions in turn minimize the impact of higher density uses. Standard density without a PUD shall be 1 dwelling unit and 1 ADU per minimum lot.
that's the language I was looking for.
Yep. So this is an exception to the rule. If you want this, you have to meet the standards of a PUD and go through this.
So that
additional
says pretty clearly, anything above one DU plus an ADU.
you have to go through a
Have to go
PUD CUP process,
Right.
which involves us you know, checking and make sure all those
Yep.
services are in place
Okay.
and all those things are there.
All right.
So land uses in this designation are associated with increased infrastructure improvements such as urban or improved sewer and water systems and improved transportation infrastructure. Minimum access requirements are paved public roads. This is a mixed-use village community area with limited square footage of 10,000 square feet for commercial structures, such as neighborhood hardware stores, markets, drugstores, etc. This designation may be focused more on pedestrian-oriented access, with first floor public uses and second story private uses, apartments and multifamily homes. So we're gonna probably get rid of some of that apartments and multifamily because we've already talked about it up top.
Yeah.
Accompanied by sidewalks and streets with crosswalks while still allowing for motorized traffic.
So just to be clear, if a guy wants to build a hardware store with an apartment up top to live in, it's not multifamily, is it?
No.
Mixed use.
Yeah, it'd be like how folks build an apartment above their garage,
Right.
except we're now allowing commercial uses, whereas in the residential zone, it has to be an accessory residential use. We would allow a commercial accessory use.
Yeah.
A commercial use, not accessory. So do you guys feel good about that?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's move down to Sagle neighborhood. Okay, so Sagle neighborhood is a residential designation that encourages development to occur within a neighborhood feel. The land use designation shall only occur within a half mile from US 95. That's conflicting with the upper one, isn't it?
What? Within a half a mile?
Oh, it used to say within 1 mile. Oh, okay.
Which copy should we be looking at, Amanda? The last one? Because I'm noticing this one looks a whole lot different than the three I got.
I sent this copy out after our last meeting, so
Okay.
it would have been the one. in
Yeah,
our-
May 15th. Okay. And just for clarification, Ms. McConaughey, this is the yellow on the map.
It would be technically sort of replacing the
Currently
yellow.
suburban.
Yeah,
Currently replacing suburban. So.
I think it's trying to do that a little bit. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
So I can't see it very well from here, but shall occur within, does this say a half a mile US 95?
Yeah, so that was one of the changes I got on one of the copies. Someone struck one and put a half mile from US 95, but I realize now that that's in conflict with the commercial zone, so we have two zones competing for the same space. So I don't know if it actually probably should say 1 mile because the yellow does extend way out past the
It goes
mile.
all the way down Spring Point, so miles from Highway 95 to top 3 or 4 miles there. And if you look at everything suburban on the map right there, everything on Lignite Road and even on the east side of Lignite Road, a lot of that is currently zoned suburban, and that's all over a mile.
Mhm. So do we want to take out the restriction for distance from Highway 95? Because there's, you know, your rural designation and your ag forestry designation does not restrict it to a distance. So we certainly don't need to do that here. We can describe this differently.
I don't think, I think if we're gonna designate certain places as Sagle neighborhood, it should not be defined by how close it is to the highway. Because there might be other places like Sagle Road, which isn't anywhere, you know, you could be not all the way down to the resort, but there might be some places where there are good spots for Sagle neighborhood. So the highway should not be the destination, in my opinion.
Yeah, what does everybody think about that?
We've already said that it needs to be served by a network of primary transportation systems. And so maybe we just need to make some more information about that. what
Is
that
there, I was
means.
just thinking, is there a way to define, I don't know, I'll just throw out some words, primary thoroughfares or something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of roads like Sagle Road and Dufert and things, and say it has to be within a certain distance of
I
those.
want to designate
I mean,
Dufert.
95 could be one too, but
Dufert Road isn't even paved.
Just
Oh,
to use the same
It's not
words
even
that
chip seal.
the road
Well,
was
West
used
is.
Oh,
I was
no
thinking
way.
of West Dufert.
collective.
Is West
West
Dufert,
Dufert.
part of it is,
Yeah, I think it's ours. I think it's in ours.
Yes.
it's paved. the rest-
And there might be other examples, but because that to me is maybe an interesting criteria, is that these areas ought to be fairly close to major transportation, major roads. Maybe
Yeah.
is just a cleaner way to say it.
So the
I don't know how you
language-
define that, though.
Yeah, so the language or the sort of the ranking system that Road and Bridge uses is main arterials are roads like Highway 95 and then collector roads, which is like your county roads that kind of spur off of there. So Sagle Road, Dufert Road. So some of those sound like they're paved and then others aren't. So we could restrict them to main arterial roads and then paved collector roads.
That would
So
work.
that would be one way of using roads as a classification. And
How
then,
do they define, is I guess suburban goes pretty far out Lakeshore, am I hearing? So how do they characterize Lakeshore?
um,
That's appropriate.
that's a collective.
Collective. It
Okay,
might be, yeah, Dufert is an arterial, Sagle is an arterial. I think it's a collective. I'm going to try to find.
The county was working on East Dufert last summer or the summer before. And I said, are you guys gonna chip seal this? And they said, no way, we're not chip sealing.
Yeah.
Big, Lakeshore?
Yep.
is that bigger than a collector?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What's
Or
classified?
would it, you know,
Minor
when,
arterial.
when people complain about a development, they talk about the traffic on the road. What defines that? You know, when people, get those all the time, or somebody wants to put in a development and all the neighbors say the road can't handle it. What are the definitive things
It's
around
usually,
that?
it's measuring car trips per day or car trips per hour or something. And
I think it's a certain density triggers a traffic
The numbers.
Oh.
count. 20 homes, I think, trigger a traffic count.
It's most commonly used by traffic engineers in carrying capacity for a home. And then you look at the peak hour of operation and you back off and again, the numbers would stagger.
Well, that usually.
I assume you're saying that the number that they allow was,
A good road
Yeah.
can handle 1,700 vehicles an hour each way.
Well, that's usually applied to commercial, isn't
No.
it? No?
No. It's
So
just a
what-
road is a road is a road.
Are we trying to change the distance from the
Yeah.
US 95, right?
Yeah.
To using collector and arterial roads?
That was the idea. That's
Okay,
what we're
yeah.
talking about. So the land use designation shall only occur on arterial roads and paved collector roads. Is that what we want to do?
well, I almost wonder if we could say, we'll have to talk, maybe, it seems like we could say within some distance of primary and secondary or minor, whatever the right word is, arterials. That would capture 95 and Lake Shore, right?
Captures too much, in my opinion.
Recreation. Lakeshore's different because it's recreation. It may be zone suburban, but it's also recreation. So.
Are you suggesting maybe we should be thinking about changing that to
Oh,
recreation
What
or
you're not
resort?
thinking of, or what I'm afraid you're not thinking of, is that these words are painting a picture for us.
Mhm.
And so when you say you want a half mile for every arterial, I'm thinking we're gonna zone suburban all the way down Sagle Road. We're gonna, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And
the
that's not what I
words
wanna
mean-
see.
Yeah, the words mean things.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
I think it needs to be like have arterial roads.
But as Milton's pointing out, that could mean you could go 10 miles out Sagle Road and have a neighborhood zone out there because it's right on an arterial road.
And,
So
well,
maybe it's a combination of things,
Well, we-
of being on an arterial road and maybe being some distance from 95,
This
but
is
maybe a
talking-
bigger difference.
This is
something-
talking urban services, right, the second paragraph. 10,000 square feet where urban and improved services are present, 2.5 acres. Primary available.
Right.
So again, I think that's why maybe the mile changed to a half mile. Because we're talking about urban services right now, those urban services are focused around a certain thing. Sewerage.
I think rural services needs to be the important part of this. I think it needs to be what Dave said about needs to have the. But it needs to be within a certain distance of services, maybe. Maybe we can add that to it.
And when you say services, what are you talking about?
Well, I'm not
You-
sure.
I don't, 'cause I don't think, you're
Define
not
them.
talking about sewer and water
No,
Yeah.
we're talking about.
stores.
What kind of, yeah, commercial services, I
Yeah.
guess that's not the right word, which would, do it.
Well, we know where those are. We know those are gonna be along 95 by and large,
No,
right?
well, but see.
Because
what-
that's where we're
I
allowing. them.
think what Milton was referring to is, if we have a resort within 5 miles. And so somebody could be 10 miles down, Sagle Road, maybe not 10 miles. And they would be within 5 miles of the services at Garfield Bay.
Say, this is Ron. I thought we were working on Sagle neighborhood. We're talking about Dufert Road, we're talking about Lakeshore Drive. And I thought all those areas were like one house per every 5 acres. We're getting way out in left field, it seems like. And I think we need to get back to Sagle neighborhood and work on this. I'm getting pretty lost here.
Yeah, good point, Ron. So it looks like Sagle neighborhood is actually designed to take over the suburban zone. And so right now, the way this reads is that 10,000 square feet is allowed where urban services are available and 2.5 acres where they're not available. So this is kind of a little bit, these lots are going to be smaller than the 5 acre minimum. It's supposed to replace suburban zoning. So we're trying to decide what those parameters should look like for something where you can get down to 2.5 acres and not 5.
So it's going to be located in Sagle Central.
Maybe if you
Stuff
put
out on the bays.
I know,
Yeah.
and it looks like Doug has his hand up next.
Yes. And then,
So has anybody, I know some people have, when you drive down Algoma Road from Highway 95, and then you cross the railroad tracks, and you've got big fields on your left and one house per 5 acres on your right, all the way down to East Dufert. Does anybody actually really see suburban zoning past those railroad tracks? I personally don't. And somehow we're going to have to keep that the way it is. I think that those railroad tracks are a good breaking point. When you cross those railroad tracks, if you haven't, it'd be a good idea to do it, because you'll see what I'm talking about. You got nothing but beautiful fields on your left, and then one house per 5 acres. Same with Sagle Road. Go down Sagle Road a ways. When you cross the tracks, are you guys going to want to see? This is about what we want to see, and this is about what the other residents of Sagle that we're representing want to see. When we cross those railroad tracks, do we want to see developments on your left and your right? Personally, I don't. Within the first half, or within the first mile of Sagle Road, the Gunter family owns most of it, quite a bit of it. And we're going to fight to keep that blue, which is currently what it is, which is the one house per 5 acres. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't know how we're going to make this happen to where you can't, have a suburban zone. If somebody wants to put in their own private water and sewer system 5 miles down Sagle Road, then with this language, they can just do that. that's not okay with me, and I don't think it's okay with a lot of people. So we'll have to get that somehow built into this language.
Yeah, good point, Doug. I think it all comes back to the distance from the 95 that we want to go back to almost. Yeah, Mark.
Currently, I mean, I'm looking at my current comp, there you go, thank you. You have yellow south of those, out on the spur road there on Davis Road. There were a couple families actually that used to manufacture things and sold at Coldwater Creek over there. And so they are currently, I think they're serviced by, I don't know if water goes under that railroad track. And so currently they can go 2.5s in there. Take, yeah, that one just south of your cursor there. They're off of Broken Antler Drive, just to the right. I'll go, he's right here, that piece right there. So currently, how big the piece is that?
20 acres.
That's 20-acre piece, and they can go right now down to 2.5-acre pieces. And you want to tell that guy he can only go down to 5s?
Yep.
And what's the reason for that?
Well, that field's underwater. We used to farm that field. That field's underwater all spring long anyways. I'm just, when you drive down it, to me, it just, those railroad tracks are, they're just a really good point. I think that it should break it up. It's just, again, it's just one man's opinion.
How far is that from 95, just out of curiosity? Like that intersection?
Right there. 690 feet.
Yeah. You want it in miles or feet?
Let's go feet.
So that's
700 feet.
And that's just,
quarter mile.
that was just an example. I mean, I'm looking at the current map that we've got in yellow, and it goes well over a mile. What's that, Norm?
Yeah, this is crazy. We're to sit and try and define this by distance from the highway and try and keep it the same it's always been. It's never going to happen. And so move on from that. Let's find a different way to define this.
What is all that green stuff on Broken Antler? I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's a wetland. I turned on the wetland map when you were talking about how wet it is, and it does have a mapped wetland covering that parcel.
I could have told you that when I almost sunk the tractor a couple times.
Yep, confirmed. Well, I mean, I liked the thought process of using the collector roads, but you're right, it does get a little sticky because you do have large roads that span across many miles. So if I zoom out, the dark red roads are going to be minor arterials or collector roads, depending on which ones you click on. So Sagle Road goes all the way out, Garfield Bay Road, Bottle Bay Road. On this side, Lakeshore.
Sorry, turn on the sewer
Sewer
water. Maybe you say within a half mile of existing sewer districts.
To go to 10,000?
Yeah,
And then the
because that's kind of what it is right now.
and then the 2.5s, what are you thinking? The same distance?
Well, I'm just throwing out a suggestion. Yeah, ask them what they think. I'm in it for the money, so let's do it. That's a joke, by the way.
Where that mesh of what's available, what do we think is gonna be available within the next 10, 15 years? As soon as this is gonna go out 15 miles from Highway 95, what do they say? Probably not. So the likelihood of that doesn't look very likely. So therefore, there's the limiting factor. Use it.
So you can see the different colors. We've got the green up here, which I think is south side, right? Yeah. And then is this the water district?
Well, it's Sagle Sewer and Water is the blue.
Okay. Sagle Valley Water and Sewer.
Yeah, as you get into the town.
Gotcha. And then up here on Bottle Bay, we've got Bottle Bay Sewer and Water. And then we've got Garfield.
Yeah, we'll just those in recreation, right?
Yep, anything along the lake shore gets captured that way for recreation.
So, but if you turn on the zone map real quick, you'll see how the zone map kind of overlays those sewer districts. And so if you said something like within a half mile of the sewer district lines, it might capture what you're trying to say.
Yep. So just like that. So there's the sewer districts, there's zoning. So it does really follow it for the most part.
And understanding that density is not allowed until they become a part of that sewer district.
That would be the 10,000 square
Yeah,
foot.
the 10,000
And
square
but
foot.
until they're waiting on it, they're allowed 2.5.
Right.
Yes.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, so you're thinking of a half mile within the sewer district boundaries?
I'm just throwing out numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea.
Yeah.
Probably the best one we heard so far. That sound good?
That's why he gets the big bucks. Amanda, can you turn on the Southside Water and Sewer District boundaries on there by chance?
There you go.
That is, okay, that's Sagle, and Southside Water and Sewer.
It's right up by Lake Shore. Right there, the green.
The green, and it comes all the way down, okay. Yep.
So are we suggesting that, I just want to understand that you say half mile of existing boundaries, as the boundaries change, does that automatically change?
Oh, no.
So we would fix this in time, the half mile of the existing boundaries as of today, more or less. And that would kind of define it for all time. And would we, I know we want to treat, I think, Bottle Bay and Garfield Bay as resort areas, so, but they have sewers, so we need to exclude those
So you would use that same language in that section.
in the resort. Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking ahead. I may think there's maybe a whole discussion to have about where should be resort be, and I think it should be, yeah. I'm also thinking we have a lot of lakeshore that maybe isn't categorized or zoned as resort today that probably should be. Right? It's all tall, small lots, and it doesn't look very much different than Garfield Bay or Bottle Bay, pretty much anywhere along the lakeshore that's been developed. So to me, it makes sense to categorize all of that as a resort and deal with it. That's my thought. I'd like to see what other people think, but so I'll just say I'm okay with that idea, with Milton's idea of going for defining the suburban as within a half a mile of the existing sewer district boundaries. And that allows, if they expand those districts, then those people can go to 10,000 square foot lots in those areas, which is, I think, where we want to have that stuff happen over time. If we get more urban services, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So it's just a half a mile of existing sewer district boundaries.
I make a motion to adopt the language Dave just expressed.
Is that as written?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
So,
The land use designation shall only occur within a half mile of existing sewer district boundaries.
You could even say it's designated on the map adopted on this date. Because we will adopt a map of this. I think screenshot. Yeah.
I got a question. Why wouldn't we just have the suburban be where there currently is services, and then as those grow, the suburban grows with those services.
Well, I mean, one thing is that kind of cuts off or makes one aspect of our current definition of suburban irrelevant, because we're saying if you don't have urban services and you're in a suburban zone, you gotta go 2.5 acres. So if you define it as only where there are services, then it's all just 10,000 square feet. The whole 2.5 acre thing is kind of a moot point.
Yeah. One of my concerns with the way this is written is, and if we went back to the map, we are going to create a pile of suburban zoning and people's, 5 acre minimums or 5 acres are now we're going to create a pile of 2.5 acre lots doing this way.
Well, you create the potential for it. It doesn't actually happen until people decide to divide their lots, but.
It's close.
So a half a mile from Chickadee Lane and Bellevue Drive and Comeback Bay. That's just gonna, that's gonna create a pile of all that light blue is 5 acre minimums and the dark blue is 10. I guess maybe Milton might be able to answer this. If we put that language in there and then we go to map this, and at the rate we're going, it's going to be a year, but is that going to turn all that yellow?
Doug, I think that's why I brought it up, is because when you turn on the zoning, it's already yellow. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem.
Well, it's yellow now, but with the way that reads, you can do it within a half a mile of the services, which the services are all in that yellow. So a half a mile, you're going to be going a half mile to the right of Chickadee Lane, a half mile to the right or east of Bellevue. That's going to be well up into that light blue and blue. Just something I'm concerned with, something I'm pointing out.
Concern is the yellow actually overlaid directly with where there are services?
No, if you turn your back and forth a couple times, it should be like
What?
if you toggle it back and forth a little bit.
The zoning?
Yeah, just turn it off and between the zoning and back on, and kind of like caveman.
Oh, yeah. I was doing that for a while, but I didn't know if I was shocking people.
So the services actually stop kind of is that the railroad I'm looking at, that red line that goes through there? Or is that, no, that's Lake, well, it's the same thing basically.
Yes, railroad, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the suburban actually already extends outside of that area with services. I mean, Doug's raising a good point. I'd like to spend some time with the map and see where that half mile goes, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, that's just one spot. So I agree with you. I think we need to look at that map more and see how that affects around down the Lakeshore Drive and those properties, and then also Gun Club and stuff like that.
So again, though, we are talking about the comprehensive plan, so we wouldn't change zoning right away. If we wouldn't change it at all until somebody applied for that change. So, I mean, so we can, the idea is, I hate to contradict myself, but the idea is to plan for some things to occur.
That's about a half mile out from the edge of the sewer district.
Where you have that green marker?
Yep. So the sewer district ends at the railroad tracks,
Right.
half mile out, ends up in those lots.
So it's into what's currently 10 acre zone.
Mhm. And then the pinkest slope
Yeah, so you're in the slope. So again, the words, right? Half mile excluding slopes. I mean, there's lots of ways to say it. So, dude, spend some time with it.
Yeah. I wish we could look at slopes at home.
But like I had, but like I had mentioned before, in July 2019, we're not even in it a full year into it, geotechnical analysis. We could probably do away with a lot of the county with the slope with geotech analysis done on something, let alone a 10 or 20 acre piece.
We would require geotechnical analysis up there, just like Schweitzer. Schweitzer is
Yeah.
10,000 square foot lots,
Right, right.
30% grade. So it would be triggered.
So my point is thus, I don't see a problem with having the 2.5 of suburban with slopes over greater than 30 with the geotech analysis being done, that someone could do something.
We had the slope stuff in there.
Yeah, but in July, the commissioners adopted geotechnical analysis. And therefore, I mean, a lot of it, so I could foresee potentially maybe the county commissioners change some of that language.
We saw the motion brought up by Joe, so on the language. We had a motion that was brought up still that we still have to deal with.
I know I'm the one who said it was okay originally, but I would like to spend some time with the map and understand better where a half mile puts us outside those existing sewer district boundaries.
So is there a second to the motion? If not, then
I mean, I don't hear one. I'm not going to second it.
Okay, so there isn't a second, so that motion.
You're actually supposed to second it before you have discussion.
Yeah, well, you know, everybody gets carried away here.
Or it could die without a second. Or be done. You know, it's making me nuts that that and is sitting there after the generally level. These areas are and so.
Certified.
So again, these were things that folks submitted to me. This is edits that were given to me, 2 months ago, where everybody was in the same document doing things. So it's not going to be perfect, but you should be able to get the gist. And
Well,
that's why we go through things together. We'll clean up the language.
Well,
as
are we
go.
talking about adopting that first paragraph? Is that what the motion was?
No.
Oh, okay.
So I think where you guys are at is that you want to spend time with Sagle neighborhood. And again, you'll have to ignore the strikeouts. That was information that was sent to me. So for example, the next big paragraph that's stricken is Sagle neighborhood should be considered an extension of Sagle mixed use commercial area, which now we're talking about that language maybe going away if we use the sewer district as boundaries. So I think Doug had stricken that last time and said that Sagle neighborhood should not have any commercial uses. So that's why he removed that.
So
Commercial uses is in there right on the paragraph above.
Yeah, I think that would be useful for probably more than just me. I know I'd like to spend some time with them. So
No, password to this one.
Oh,
It might be easier to get them password.
Oh, I never thought of that. I did talk to Jim about fixing this, but
I mean, it was taken over a year ago almost.
He's a little leery about it because the property lines don't line up. So sometimes you have to turn the property lines off.
So on that note, we're kind of in a quandary here that we can't really proceed because we want to look at all that and then redo Sagle neighborhood, and then we're going to get into the resort, which is going to take up a lot of time. And so
there's maybe something we could talk about on this, because I see one of Mark's comments, and I saw them actually when we did these a while ago, and it raised a question in my mind about it's about the slopes. And I assume whatever that reference is, it's off to the right side now, something -762 is that a county ordinance?
Geotechnical analysis.
Yeah, it seems a bit circular to say we're going to rely on county ordinance to accomplish something rather than put something in the comp plan that addresses it. I mean, the comp plan is for 20 years, and I think we should say what we want to have happen in the comp plan. And maybe there are cases now today where that conforms or aligns with what current ordinance is, but there may be times when we say something and then it doesn't align with what current ordinance is. But I think the comp plan, we should say what we want to have happen and not rely on something that's already in ordinance, which also could change. Follow what I'm saying?
Well, in general, but as far as geotech analysis in regards to slopes, we were discussing about things over 30% slope, and then how much of the acreage that exceeds a 30% slope be a trigger mechanism for zoning. My point being, the county recognized that the commissioners adopted this ordinance in regards to slope. If you have the geotechnical analysis, you go from, what's it, 10, from 10s to 5s, or it's the slope. My point being, I don't think there should be a trigger mechanism in there, just because if someone did get an analysis done on the slope, on geotechnical analysis, it could be safe. It addresses the box, safety, the general welfare, health, safety, and general welfare of the property. Big concern, obviously back in 2014, when we had the landslides, the properties that had the landslides on were almost perfectly level.
But to me, I think there was a potential to use slope as a characteristic that helps us define land use designations that supports not any of those things you mentioned, but supports rural character. And by saying that the only thing we're going to use slope for is health, safety, et cetera, you sort of take that potential tool off the table.
So is it an aesthetic value to you?
Yeah, kind of.
Is it an aesthetic value for everybody?
It's rural character, because to me, one of the most foundational characteristics of rural character is open space, it's low density development. And so how do we define clearly that some areas we want to be R10 or Ag 20 or whatever, when we get into those other land use designations when we get there. And we have sort of clear criteria that's why we said this area is this way and that area is that way. And you take that tool off the table when you say the only thing that matters as far as slopes is health, safety, welfare, et cetera. Those are all important. I don't want to dismiss those, but
not only are they important, they're codified.
Yeah. Today,
yeah,
but that could change, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I that's just my feeling on the geotech. Amanda, would you mind pulling up this map again? And I'll give you some examples on the slopes.
And it looks like Doug does have his hand up. He might have a comment as well. And while I switch maps, Doug, if you have anything to speak to.
No, sorry, I forgot that was up.
No problem. Okay, well, we're to the map.
Okay, if you move your cursor, you see where Lignite Road is, just move down a couple inches. Right about there. Right there. Now, if we could do a slope overlay of that, here's my point, and I already done this. It's zone rural, it's comp plan rural, but it's got some slopes greater than 30%. One of the mock-ups that we've seen was anything over 30%, we're making it 20-acre minimums. I'm not prepared to take and tell the Converse family that he's got something that's zone rural, comp plan rural, and now he's going to have to go to 20s when he could potentially develop that with a geotech analysis. So my point being, I'm looking for a review. You've got the whole thing is that pink? I'm colorblind.
It is, yep.
The whole thing is almost 30% slope. Everything is, because it's under 5, it's signed off by the fire chief. So things can be done, I guess. I don't want to see slope being a definitive answer or a trigger mechanism to throw something into a much lower density. And I think we have a tool that the county commissioners gave us last July with that.
Do you know that was already?
What's that? 30%?
No, the geotechnology, it was already.
But there was something that they adopted in July 19.
Yeah, but we changed the or to and. Yeah, or and to or. Yeah, because before there was 3 criteria, and you had to meet all 3.
That's or.
Forced to do a geotech, so now you have to do any one of those 3 triggers of geotech. But if you look around the country, you know, slow ordinances, the purpose is just what he's saying, to protect the aesthetics and all of that. There is also public health and safety. You know, we haven't had a 6.0 here in a while, right? So. So you're right, either we address it by the size of the lots, or we address it through other ways.
I think this whole section needs to rewriting here. And, yeah, and so I know we have 13 more minutes, but you know, maybe we need to go home and re-look at this. I mean, I'm looking at the next paragraph that says minimum access requirements are public or private roads. And we just had a discussion 15 minutes ago about how they have to be arterials.
So you're making a motion?
to
Literally.
end the meeting. I mean, we do need them. I would move that we take this home and look at it.
All right. So Jeanette has a motion to adjourn. We have a second from Joe. Discussion?
Discussion.
I heard that, sorry. I didn't want to get too far. So these are our busy months. We're taking in a lot of permits every week. We're up to almost 400 now since the first. We did 1,100 last year. We probably hit that. Minor line divisions and vacation rental permits. We're just really busy. So I actually have 9 people working on building location permits. And we still have 60 to approve. So, so last year and the year before, we've taken a couple of months off in the summer so we can focus on those other projects. I mean, we have at the next 3 P&Z hearings, we have 16 files in the next 3 meetings. So the last one's a doozy. So we're just really busy with staff reports and people. And so what we offered to Blanchard was we'll meet in a month, but you're doing all the work. You're doing all the talking, you're doing the discussion. We'll send 1 or 2 people. Priest Lake and Priest River are taking the next 2 or 3 months off. Priest Lake will meet again in October. Priest River will meet again in a few months. Like I said, Blanchard's going to meet, but we're probably going to send 1 or 2 people out there for it because they're just going to be working on their document. So
Where are we in relation to them?
They only wrote the land use section. They want to be done in 2 months. They only wrote the land use chapter. They didn't do all the others. They did a survey of their community, and then they're using that as their analysis for justification for the land use section.
And just to further to Milton's comments, there were 2 months in a row that we didn't have enough to even have a quorum and do anything. And I think it was July and August last year or so. If that helps you guys make a decision.
The sun's still up. Once the sun comes out and warms up this place, we know what you're doing.
write it without you guys, you might not like it. So.
Hey.
I would love that. I would love to see that.
I think the problem with this section is it's not defined. How is it different? This is suburban and not comp plan, is that right? Is
You
that-
guys are, what I've gathered is that your group is trying to replace suburban with this.
Yeah, okay,
But
so
it's going to be.
I'm looking at Sagle rural residential, and we were just talking about slope and, and I'm looking at how the problem with this one to me is it's not defined, and here we are trying to define it. And the original definition was a half mile from US 95, and we said, no, we don't want that. Now we don't have a definition. I mean, we're struggling with a definition, and I don't know how, obviously Sagle rural residential is less dense than
So if you
Sagle
want to
neighborhood, but we do not have, we do not, it talks, the only definition we have is clustered community.
Yeah, well, I think right now too, we're going on slopes. We want to take a look on the map before we
Yeah.
make it. So I think we should still plan on meeting and come prepared with your edits, even like sending them over to Amanda as soon as you get something done. And then we still meet and then like we'll take Milton's advice, he might send somebody, but we need to just start hammering this stuff out.
We do, but I'm just saying, I think the problem that we're having with this section is that we can't decide on a definition.
I think, so I would say a little bit, could I offer a friendly amendment to that statement, sort of? I think we have a pretty good idea of what we want these places to look like. We know about densities and lot sizes
Yeah.
and things like that. We've got that pretty well down. Where I know I'm personally struggling is how to define these areas, where they are, minimizing conflicts with existing zoning, if you will, conflicts. It's not maybe not the right word, but I don't want to wholesale change people's zoning. That's a real concern we have to have. Some of that's probably going to happen, I'm guessing, but we're probably going to have to grandfather some people. Well, if that's the case, then why do we even bother meeting? If we're not going to change the zoning at all anywhere, then we have it. It's done.
So moved. No.
Right? Some people are going to get grandfathered, I'm guessing, on their current zone. Would be my
Well,
guess.
it's been happening.
Right.
With other stuff that we've been
Right.
doing that they're just grandfathered in.
So, and then how to ensure that whatever we decide we want kind of has some real clear criteria to it, so that you don't see, I think Milton gave us the statistics a year and a half ago about how many people come forward every year with zone change requests, and the vast majority of them just get approved. It's like, well, why have zoning?
Yeah.
If a guy just comes forward with a zone change request and it gets approved all the time, more or less. That doesn't make sense to me.
Really? Mr. Chairman, we got 6 minutes left.
We're still in discussion, so.
Oh, I'm
we're
sorry.
just-
Oh, good. I'm embarrassed that we weren't able to even complete one, and I think we could in 5 minutes on the Sagle remote forest. I think
Those would be easier.
we just do away with it.
And the last
We
two.
don't have Sagle remote forest designation because it's Forest Service and state.
It's all
land.
government land.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one would be.
Well, that would be the quickest things that we can talk
That's
about.
why I
that-
said we do it in 5 minutes.
I even think rural residential would be fairly,
It's not gonna happen in 5 minutes, I guarantee you.
but not 5 minutes.
Yeah, so goes the fact, we can put it on the top of the list that are the agenda for the next meeting, we get that knocked out. So that way we can knock out each other more on the verbiage and all this other stuff right now. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn.
Who
and-
seconded? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Joe. Joe
Seconded? Who
Seconded,
firsted?
Jeanette,
Who firsted?
Jeanette,
Okay.
sorry. So all in favor, adjourn?
Aye, Doug Gunner.
Hi, Ron.
Opposed? Okay,
So our job is to come up.
we
with
are adjourned.
A single neighborhood definition. Instead of
Yeah.
two.
Look at the rest, even though we're adjourned, look at it all. Yeah, let's get it all together and,